Hello, I hope everybody is doing well. We are continuing with our Bible reading. We are in the Gospel of Luke, this first half of the year, 2019. We are reading the same chapter 5 days a week to really dive into things and to consider what we find in each chapter. By now, you have noticed that the Gospel of Luke, the chapters are pretty long, and so this actually works out really well for us as we go through this particular Gospel. For today, I just want you to think about where Jesus is in his ministry at this time and just some of the things that he is encountering and the challenges that are coming his way and how he's able to balance so many things. If you remember back in Luke chapter 3, we see that in verse number 23 that Jesus, he began his ministry, he was about 30 years of age. So he begins his ministry around the age of 30, and we see in chapter 4 that he was tempted by the devil. He begins to preach, he begins to perform a variety of miracles. The crowds are increasing. And by the time we get to chapter 6, what do you see? Well, as you read chapter 6, you're going to see a couple of events that take place on the Sabbath. You're going to see some of the Jews who are looking to accuse Jesus of doing something that was sinful in nature. Jesus never did anything that was sinful in nature, and yet many of these religious leaders were seeking to find something so that they might be able to accuse him. Later on in Luke chapter 6, you're going to find Jesus performing a miracle on the Sabbath, that's where these individuals in verse 11 would be filled with rage and would begin to discuss what they might do with Jesus. You also find something else that, if you remember back in Luke chapter 5, you also saw. Back in Luke 5 and verse 16, we saw how Jesus would often slip away to pray. Again, in Luke chapter 6 and verse number 12, we see that he went off to the mountain to pray, and he spent the whole night in prayer to God. Then immediately after that, he would appoint his 12 apostles. So as you see these things that are being repeated, certainly there's some things for us to hold on to and to really take to heart. One of the big things is prayer. Making sure that we have that time alone with God in prayer. Secondly, you see the crowds increasing in verse 17 of Luke chapter 6. The crowds just continue to get bigger and bigger. And so we see the rise of the influence of Jesus and his ministry and the impact that he really is having. Later on in Luke chapter 6, we find some very powerful teaching, some unexpected blessings. We'll talk more about those later. And we see just what Jesus expects his followers to do, the type of mindset that we are supposed to have. And so as you go through Luke chapter 6 this week, there's 49 verses. Spend some time and see, where is Jesus at this time in his ministry, and what is he teaching, and what impact is this having? I think as we go through the reading and have that mindset as well, I think that will help us out to really take as much away as we can from these daily Bible readings. So I hope this helps. I will talk to you later. Take care, and God bless.